In this video, you're going to be taking a look at Grand Admiral Thrawn for the Black Series 6-inch line, and this is the archive version of him, based upon experience from the Rebels TV series. Overall, this is a really good action figure. I used to own the very first version of him, not the one that came with all the accessories as a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive, but the repack of him a few months later. And I went ahead and sold that one probably within a year or less after I purchased it, and the reason being because I wasn't totally sold on the Rebels version of Thrawn. He does look a lot different than how he does in the expanding universe. The main differences are his uniform is a little bit different. I'm not exactly sure what some of those differences are off the top of my head. I think maybe the shoulder boards are one thing, but the big thing that really sticks out is the pupils. The EU Thrawn did not have any irises or pupils at all. It was just plain red eyes, and that was it. Here he does have regular eyes, so I guess it makes him look a little bit more human than he does in the EU. But at the time, I wasn't totally sold on it, and over time, I've kind of warmed up to it a little bit. I figured by the time the archive release came around that, well, this is probably the only Thrawn we're ever going to get in either TVC or Black Series going forward, so I'll just go ahead and get one for the 6-inch scale because I am a big fan of Grand Admiral Thrawn regardless. But then it turns out, not too long ago, Hasbro revealed they're doing a 3-pack that includes a Darth Vader, General Grievous, and then a Thrawn that looks very similar to his Heir of the Empire character. And they actually included the Salamari with it. The Salamari does not come with this Thrawn at all. It's from the Heir to the Empire comic pack or comic book of Luke that I do have reviewed on the channel. But Thrawn to me looks so much better with the Salamari, and thankfully it does work for this action figure. I'm sure Hasbro had that in mind when they did the Salamari for Luke, since perhaps doing a repack of Thrawn at that point was not possible. We'll just go ahead and include it with a character that's similar, and then you can include it with Thrawn here. So very nice for them to do that. But despite all that, I'm probably not going to get that 3-pack at this point because it's like $70, and even if it goes on sale, I don't really want to spend potentially $30 or $40 for 2 action figures I already have and then just an EU Thrawn to go on top of it. And at this point, I'm satisfied with this Rebels version of Thrawn regardless. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at him. So I do think one thing about this Rebels version of Thrawn too, I know this is probably going for a little bit more of a realistic interpretation of him, but he kind of reminds me of like a vampire. In fact, he looks even more like a convincing vampire than Christopher Lee does as Count Dooku. Since Hasbro seems to like doing those Halloween action figures, you think this would have been a great one to repaint as like a vampire and then include a cape with him. But you can tell based upon the way his eyebrows are positioned, that he has a bit of skepticism about him. It does display a certain amount of intelligence. And there are some differences between this archive release and the original, and it's just in the paint job. I think the face on this action figure is a little bit more, how do I describe it? A little more shiny, I guess. And I forget if the first release had the painted face or not, and then this one had the photoreal, but this one definitely has the photoreal. His first figure was around that time where it was still in that transition phase where it was ending with the painted faces and going into the photoreal. But overall, the head sculpt's pretty good. The slicked back hair looks very nice. As for the rest of his uniform, definitely signifies a Grand Admiral. The shoulder boards are nice. In turned out pretty good. Not something that is on the comic pack Thrawn back in 2008. So this is a little bit of an enhancement. He does have the 2 cylinder pins there, the rank badge, which I think is probably accurate to being a Grand Admiral. And of course, the Grand Admirals have the white uniforms. He does have that detail right there on his collar, which is nice. And it has all the typical folds that you would expect with someone wearing a uniform, or any clothing for that matter. All the wrinkles and folds in his tunic. Has the belt there, which is pretty standard for most of the officers. And then the holster. Then his legs and his boots here. In terms of his articulation, he does have the double ball joint at the head, I think. Yeah, you can see a little bit of it right there. So he can look down quite a ways if you work with it. And then, of course, he can look up if you want him to. He does have hinged shoulders and hinged elbows, which do go past 90 degrees, which is very nice. Hinged wrists, both of them go in and out. Joint torso, hinged hips, swivel thigh. And he does have the double hinge at the knees, still with the 2 pins and the rocker ankles. I do kind of wish they did the knees a little bit different, because you can see there's a little bit of a gap at the edge of his boot here. And I think the way the Hasbro did the legs, it's a little wonky. You can see it's a little bit of a gap up here as well, because sometimes it can be a little tricky to get him to stand on his own. I don't think this archive release was as bad, but I distinctively recall on my original he was a little more difficult, so would be nice to have that cleaned up a little bit. But it does seem like they improved that some with this archive release. Let me know in the comments if you agree with that point, that they may have made the knees a little bit more wonky than usual. In terms of his accessories, very light, no Salamari like I said, but he does have this pistol here, which fits nicely in his hand, and it is a very unique pistol, not like anything we've seen with any other action figures before. It is cast all in gray. But I do find it interesting that Thrawn would carry a pistol, because that's not something he did in the EU. I figured he'd be the type where he'd just walk around with his hands behind his back like that, and then he would leave it up to someone else to handle the weaponry for him. I guess not. And just when I say that this Thrawn stands pretty good on his own, I seem to have trouble getting him the balance. But we'll do one comparison here real quick, and that's with his scaled down TVC action figure. I did review this one on the channel about 7 or 8 months ago at this point. And they're pretty faithful to one another. As you can see, there are some differences. I think the head sculpt was updated a little bit. Looks a little cleaner on the TVC action figure, I think. And it almost looks like, if you squint hard enough, kind of looks like more of the Heir to the Empire Thrawn. It's a little bit of a darker blue skin tone than the Black Series one here. I like both these action figures. I'm glad to have them both in my collection. I also did a short around the time I reviewed this action figure. Yeah, see, he doesn't stand too well. But I did a short between these two, and then I included the comic pack Thrawn along with it. So if you want to see how all three of them look together, would recommend checking out the history of the shorts I made, and you'll find it along the way there. Oh, of course, the Salamary falls back. Well, anyway, I'll get them at the end of the video. So would I recommend this Thrawn for your collection? If you're a big fan of Grand Admiral Thrawn, I would say sure. If you're a bigger fan of the EU Thrawn, you might want to consider getting that 3-pack that's going to be coming out soon, especially if you don't have the Clone Wars General Grievous, and maybe you could use an extra Darth Vader. That's one seems like it will be a good action figure. As far as price is concerned, I don't think he's too bad now. When the first release of Thrawn came out, he was very expensive. He doesn't want to stand either. But he was very expensive, and then after they did this archive version of him, it seems like his price has been relatively stable since then. And I did get this action figure at my local Walmart. I didn't really go out of my way to purchase him again. It was one of those things where I was at Walmart, they happened to have one on the shelves, and I thought, well, okay, I'll go ahead and get another one, and it was only like $20, so no problem at all. But I'm glad he's part of my collection regardless. Like I said, I've warmed up to the Rebels Thrawn over the last few years, and he looks really good. In my Black Series collection, I usually have him displayed alongside with my Tarkin. But anyways, that concludes this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for plenty more reviews in the future. There'll always be more to come. If you haven't already, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I always appreciate all your support, and check out some of the links in the description if you haven't done so already. As always, thanks for watching.